Can you hear me? Yes. Perfect. Hello. I have the honor of presenting next panelists, Monika, Gendek, and Kasia Rejniak. I was wondering what to say. Both are Gestalt psychotherapists, and Monika is a supervisor at our institute. And I'll just say that they have this sort of energy. Monika and Kasia, both of you actually, whenever I talk to you, something melts in me, so to speak. And this is a feeling of this good conversation, of good contact that it's something that I don't realize on a daily basis, that there's something tense in my body. And I guess it's related to the culture we live in, this hurriedness, this haste, this madness, you know. And so, okay, let's hear what you have to say, because I have the feeling that your presentation will be about presence, about what I experience in my contact with you, even if brief. This is the sense of presence. And when I think about rerouting in life, this is this presence we're talking about. So the floor is yours. Thank you, Karina, for this invitation, and hello to you all and all your relationships. Yes, hello to you and all your relationships. Hello, Kasia. And we decided to start by saying hello and hello to all your relationships. And this is a greeting which actually stems from this profoundly ecological source. And this ecology, from the very start, from the very outset, it leads us to thinking about the world as a whole. And it leads us to this perspective, which is very much present in our field, namely that we are all interconnected. We are all hugely dependent on one another, all related. So when I say hello to you and to all your connections, to all your relationships, I say hello to your roots also, to the homes, to the families you're from, to your ancestors. We're saying hello to your wild nature, to your wildlife, to all that you experienced with bare feet when you were children. We say hello to your current connections, to your current links to the human and the non-human world. And hello to future generations too, because we have this conviction that at our meeting today, which is an attempt to reflect, an attempt to take root again, to reroot ourselves in life, we have the feeling that we are doing work for future generations today. And From and Laura Pearls feel very close and dear to us, because deep ecology always invites us to think about time, because this thinking about time makes us want to come back to our responsibility for what we are doing now and what we react to or we don't react to currently. And From used to say that when he thinks about the past, he thinks about, he invites this this attitude of being grateful in himself. And when he thinks about the present, he thinks about service. And let us reflect on how we want to serve as psychotherapists, how we need to rethink the notion of serving others as psychotherapists at this time of crisis. And we think about the attitude of responsibility. And Laura Pearls is also with us. So we work with an invisible and a visible circle. And she used to say that everything that we do at the psychotherapist's office is political. And we understand it in this way as something that we do at our office as therapists. And we will also call upon you to go outside your office and to tell you what you can do outside, because it's political. It is a tool of influence, whatever you do. And it's important for us to answer the question why we are here together, the two of us, because you might find it interesting that we are reflecting on it together, and it actually results from the fact that we both reflected on crises, different sorts of crises. Monika thought about the climate crisis as a person oriented more towards that perspective. I'm an addiction therapist, so I thought about the addiction-related crises. And when we thought about these crises, when I was working on my book on addiction, Monika really helped me a lot, and Monika was a companion I was able to discuss various thoughts with. And we noticed that we were talking about different things, but essentially touching upon the same source, identifying the crisis similarly. And that was a crisis of belonging. That was a crisis related to losing memories. And it was related to losing the other on the contact boundary, and a crisis related to responsibility. And we will talk about this more extensively in a while, but we actually noticed that we shared a common language. And what was difficult was being in it alone, being in this experience, in the experience of expanding one's awareness related to crisis on one's own. And getting together really helped us and supported us. It gave us much strength and hope whenever there were moments in which we were losing this strength and hope. And why we are here, we are very grateful for this, because it's the first time we are together in this configuration. We attended a conference where we had separate presentations, and we always used to be near, but not sitting here right next to each other, like we are sitting now. And it really gives this presentation a very strong sense when we are preparing for this conference, this moment, this pre-contact moment before meeting all of you. We really worked in this experience of sharing our time and giving each other strength and hope, and this experience of co-creating, of accompanying each other in this toil related to talking about the crisis. Hence our assertion, which we are going to develop, that at a time of crisis, actually it's been shown just a while ago when Anna said that she was happy to be with us today, and she was happy to share herself with us. At this time of crisis, we must not walk alone. We must experience the other human being. We must experience support. We need company. We need a companion who will be just like the wild geese we saw in the other presentation, with the goose in the lead changing all the time. So this is what we would like to invite you to do now. So this intention, we are sowing seeds today, and we cried 17 times with Kasia, I think, during all these presentations. I don't know why we prepared why we put all this makeup on, because it's all gone by now. So you know, Lena, you started this conference. I was trembling. My body was shuddering, and so thank you already at this point for this testimony you gave, and we are witnesses to each other's experience today. So the culture of belonging, this is what we want to sow wherever we put our foot, and this is the great exile of our culture, mature dependence. And if we are talking about mature dependence, I want to talk about building communities in which I don't know if anyone is capable of it, but we are still learning. Communities in which we will be able to face the crisis and the crises that overlap, to process ambivalence together, because a natural mechanism, defense mechanism, is denial. It is a very strong mechanism, a defense mechanism, which uh, when I work with the climate crisis for a decade now, it sometimes saved me. Oftentimes, it saved me emotionally. This mechanism of denial as a mechanism of defense, and to have it to work, to do this work for the sake of creating communities that save lives, we need to create big vessels in which we will be able to process various emotional adaptations of ours related to anxiety, anger, shame, guilt. Hence, our proposition, Kasia mentioned, to survive these crises. It's impossible to do it individually, on one's own. And I believe that the world of capital scene, so to speak, dominated by the myth of progress, it demands us to take responsibility for our own losses, as the previous speaker said from the which school of Gestalt. Actually, that presentation was very similar to what we are going to do now. We are simply invited to experience loss on our own. So today, we invite you to visit Tender Voids, and we'll tell you all about it in a while. And before we tell you why Tender Voids, I wanted to add another proposition which guides me, and it is an assertion that we need to build a path which we will tread to get away from addiction, but rather addiction-ridden self-regulation and dealing with various losses and creating this mature dependence. So accompanying one another in this world, because the crisis of belonging is also a crisis of losing shelter, where we have no place, where we belong, where we have no place to take shelter. The situation of war, the situation of migration is shown here, and it is important for us to rebuild this belonging in our relationships with each other. And why we are talking about tender voids? Why have we called them tender voids? Well, we reflected on this for a long time, looking for a word which would render this depth of these crises we are talking about, this crisis related to losing belonging, this crisis related to losing shelter, to war, to the loss of biodiversity, to the climate crisis. So this omni crisis is such a capacious word that it's actually hard to name all the crises that appear in the world today. But why did we call this tender voids? Well, we noticed that in each of these stories, we would find experience of vulnerability. And each of these places we describe, thinking about crisis, is a place which is wounded. This tender, vulnerable place, which is wounded by this trauma related to crisis. And so we came up with these words by Gianni Franceschetti, who's an Italian psychiatrist and psychotherapist who um, writes books and works with people undergoing going through mental crises. He said, in a field imbued with trauma, we have the experience of a dissociation imbued field, and dissociation also kind of encompasses these tender, vulnerable places, which can't be actually encompassed by tenderness because they are mute, as Gianni writes. Tenderness is quiet. Tenderness is mute. And so these places also are associated with absence. And so it's hard to capture this, it's hard to feel this, because this dissociation, which is another defense mechanism, protects us from this. And what is very important for us is to return to talking about pain and to feel this pain anew, this pain which is in a way natural and is not pathological at all. And so we experience, thanks to this pain, we experience loss, we experience the other on the contact boundary. And so we can start belonging again to the world. Because when we are in dissociation, in a way, we cease to belong on a bodily level. I don't know what to add.
Gdy jeszcze myślę o czułych pustkach, to myślę sobie, że
when thinking about tender voids, I think that Johnny said that delicacy and tenderness is a radical act, overfilled, saturated with violence in the world. For me, tenderness is the younger or older sister of love. Now, when I think about voids, I think of the things I work with groups when we meet on the topic of climate crisis. We talk about solastalgia. It's a neologism created by Glenn Albrecht, a philosopher in the 21st century, who describes the suffering of individuals but groups related to loss of specific places which were important, emotional to us, where we used to relax. So solastalgia is this longing for a home where we are still in, but that we're losing before our eyes. And often people in therapeutic settings tell me about how they cry because the felling of trees outside the windows or changes of landscapes built up by developers. So what they see outside the window, people don't know that they can share their fear of how the lives of their children will look like in therapeutic settings, where already now preschools are checking whether they can take the kids for strolls due to air pollution. So that is also a part that leads to suffering, loss of identity, but also solidarity. People feel very alone in this because in the public sphere, there is no place for this. There are no groups where you can talk about this. People feel left alone with their processes of grief. So these are the places we're losing due to climate change, due to wars, and due to greed of part of the world as well. And I also think that tender voids at the same time hold a certain promise and hope, so they have a bit of homeopathy in them because they are signs of a state in which through tenderness we can cure the crisis of belonging in our attentive, inclusive meetings. At the same time, voids understood as fertile void, which again, in times of late capitalism, is not popular. It's not something we can create because a void is a wonderful space for relaxation, for nourishment, for regeneration. What is also important with this void, and what I've learned from you, Monika, is that when you leave that void or enter it, what you need and is the awareness that there's someone waiting for you up there, that there's someone standing there waiting for you, that you don't leave that void and enter another one, but from that emptiness and void, you go into the world related to belonging or love or tenderness or the presence of another human being. But there is no speeding up there, because today's world that relies much on culture, is also related to the culture of wealth. And in the culture of wealth, there is a lot, the pace matters, the tempo matters, the pace in which you make money. Whereas the culture of regeneration that we invite people into, and this experience of leaving crisis, we cannot speed. What we need is to give ourselves as much time as we need, at the same time waiting for the other person without judgment, without feeling that if grief or lasts a week, then you need to take some medication because that's too long. Today's world medicates our pain, medicates our suffering, and that takes away the sense of belonging, but also the possibility of self-regulation in a healthy manner. So Kasia and I were thinking of the type of community, the types of communities that the world needs right now. We ourselves have created such community, a group for women that we've created, a space that we've created, and we'll talk about later this Ursa Meyer, the mayor that we called, or the Great Bear Constellation Group that we referred to. So we were thinking of what types of groups do we need as a therapist right now, for them not to be only support therapeutic groups, but also support groups financially available to others, because following our thesis that it's not enough to work on an individual level to treat and cure tender voids. This is our great calling to you, because we know that on the other side of the screens we have very versatile, talented therapists all over the world listening in. I've listened in people from different continents. So we today call out to you to find in yourselves the courage and the strength to create communities. We need to do it in groups, because we are doing this in therapeutic offices, but groups that will show that our growth occurs in spirals. So there's a time for blooming, but there are times of wintering or seasoning where we need to protect our energy and relax. Perhaps for us this is obvious, but for others, this is knowledge that is nowhere supported. We are calling for communities that will work based on practices of good dependency, based on care, not only for other people, but also for nature. And taking examples that we can share here in Poland, showing that this inspiration is already underway. When I was preparing my presentation about late Anthropocene, and my colleague after me told me that based on my presentation, she came up with the idea that students from psychotherapy schools will make up for it through social work and cleaning up forests near to rivers. Another colleague of mine, thanks, Piotr, you said it's a great idea. Another colleague of mine, while explaining what is the unity of the organism environment in a group, invited a group for cleaning up the Baltic Sea as part of a therapeutic process. So we invite this. We're showing this to you we know that part of you are supervisors, you run your own schools, and we want to encourage you to search for such ways, these biocentric methods or manner in as a way of thinking about therapy, that it combines us, it connects us to the care for the entire network, so that it can become part of the education of future therapists. And I'm very grateful to the Łódź School of Gestalt, because the Gestalt School in Łódź has a subject like that in the first year of therapy, therapeutic training. So this is something that we are very, very happy about.
Bardzo ważne jest, żebyśmy
It
zwoływali
is very important to create communities which are intentional and horizontal, so which are based on inclusive leadership and not authority or power. To create communities which, like the ones today, we are co-creating and we are acting together. People are taught how to go into rivalry with one another, and they're not taught to go into activity that are in the service of wisdom. We have a lot of knowledge in the world, but we don't have enough wisdom, and all activities, all initiatives that teach us to co-create, collaborate, will treat us how to care about the other, and go into things that will support the network of life. When talking about why we need such communities, we need them for a whole bunch of reasons, but also due to prophylaxis of addiction. From when I talk about prophylaxis in this area, people list the programs that we have, but the truth is that no program will protect you against this search for refuge in addiction if the only other experience is the contact with humans. So even if we're not thinking about the world in global terms, and let's say it's easier to translate this into human verbal language than places, communities, which not necessarily therapeutic, because prophylaxis prevention is also in people meeting up and raking gardens or cleaning up forests. But we also have like Boy Scouts, Boy Scout communities. So the experience of communities which don't have to be therapeutic, the lack of such communities or uprooting such communities from Polish reality. In Poland, we no longer have that many of them, because in the culture of capitalism, everything needs to be sold and bought. The lack of such communities in practice impacts the loss of belonging, and the need of regulation and self-regulation, and the experience of the abuse of psychoactive substances or other addictions. So this prevention aspect is equally important. And I think
ważne jest tworzenie tych różnych wspólnot
it's
regeneracyjnych.
very important to create all these regenerative communities. We as therapists are working in the field of trauma or overlapping crises. So I think the time has come to step away from the myth of a wounded savior in favor of a dancing savior. So step away from the superhero and the wounded healer to the dancing healer. The dancing healer is connected to their body, to others, to rhythm, to their own regulation. And there are so many tasks ahead of us as therapists. So again, we need to have our communities, not only, supervisions, interventions, hypervisions, where we keep educating ourselves, but we need communities that will take care of us, that will nourish us,
Po prostu wzajemnie karmić i odżywiać, ponieważ
where we will nourish one another and feed one another. This image of the flock of geese is still in my mind all the time. If we stick to that, then we need to keep shifting the leadership position in that flock. We combine psychotherapy with activism, and we know it's very prone to burnout. So we need those periods of fertile void, and only in fertile void can we gain deep awareness, and only from the place of deep awareness can be creative. Otherwise, we'll be recreative. Slowly, we're approaching the finish line. But I also wanted to say that I see the world of psychotherapy and therapy as the practice of healing storytelling, of searching for ideas about the world. I think psychotherapy can be a place where we can transform
krzywdzący dla świata
this harmful anthropocenic centric view to a biocentric one at the heart of which is the heart and love. We need to bridge gaps between us. So we want to leave you with this metaphor of this living bridge, the one that is in India. They have the monsoons are raised the river levels so much
w obrazie naszej konferencji
that it's impossible to cross. So they plant big tree root bridges and intertwine them. So today we are inviting you to weave and create this through these various initiatives, this live bridge that will allow us to create this world from the era of great loneliness to symbiocene, where we can be connected to a sphere that will create connections with the living world. But in order for this to happen, we need various factors, we need deep questions. And we both feel that at this conference, we have the courage, we are taking the courage to do this. There are questions which you cannot easily answer at an easy profit or benefit. They move us, they move the structure that is responsible for denial. They take us out of that experience of denial. And the question that we'd like to ask ourselves and you is how to go from addiction or dependency to codependency, but also how to build a culture of belonging and mature belonging. The thoughts that support us in this, we read the literature, we deal with this topic from this activist perspective. There are 3 sentences that I'd like to cite. The first one is to grow slowly. The words grow slowly. The second, bear fruit when you are ready. And three, trust the process of fermentation. Now, if I may add, the words of John Macy, a great teacher of ours. We recommend her books tremendously. She's an activist who created tools that can be easily applied in psychotherapy. The reconnection tools, gratitude, honoring pain, looking with the new eyes, and the practice of active hope. Joanna wrote, if the world is to be healed through human effort, I am convinced that this will occur through the doings of regular people whose love for life is bigger than their fear. Thank you very much.
To jest taki też moment, nie, że jeśli ktoś z Państwa miałby jakieś...
This is also the time to ask questions or share some thoughts and reflections. So that's the space for you now.
There was quite a lively chat going on whilst you were talking. I can't understand because some of it's in Polish and some of it's in Russian.
Jasne.
So dziękuję.
Aha, tak.
Right. I'll help in that case. So let's see. Piotr commented a great idea of the communities in which we are, Monika, Kasia, Aldona, Piotr, or Lena, where having fun and being in the community is nourishing. And when the girls were talking about Symbiocene, there's this question, should we believe in Symbiocene? I don't actually understand this question too much, but okay, there's a comment here. I'm slightly afraid that it's an idyll, and we'll refer to this, right? Precisely. What we do is we actually want to transcend this bucolic myth and you know, escaping from nature into some even wilder nature, so into some wildlife. So I've seen some very demanding classes where you need to get dirty, you know, and you have to make an effort to cook dinner for everybody or cook lunch and to think about these people, because the therapists that attend these classes, they think we will invite them to actually get to love nature, but we talk about climate crisis, we talk about emotions that are very hard to bear, and therapists are absolutely horrified at this. Yes, John is showing us some sheep, apparently. So perfect. So when we were running the Great Bear, you know, the Ursa Maya, and we said we were inviting people to practice truth, that people would basically have to go outside regardless of the weather and connect to that field surrounding us, and it would be very uncomfortable. And then we decided that we would bring some food that we would share, and unlike, you know, catering at Marriott Hotel. Initially it was very hard, and it led to some resistance. We were not used to that. So you like this bucolic myth of an idyll of sorts, but once we'd overcome this initial resistance, and there was this anniversary of our Great Bear, of our Ursa Meyer group, and and we brought this food to our joint table, we came to the conclusion that it was not about the myth of a needle, because we were really watching it. It's a very valid comment you made. But once you overcome this, once you transcend this and you get really down to work and you get involved, in order to restore belonging, we need to put a lot of effort into it because it's very hard work. And this effort is one of the factors that are tremendously important to restore belonging, but it creates this sense of attachment too, because if you put an effort into something, you have respect for it and you kind of receive it in a different way. It becomes an asset for you. So in this culture of affluence, we don't get attached to anything. So something's broken, so we can just buy a new thing. You know, we don't even have to think what happens to it. We simply throw stuff away and we buy new stuff. And so this is an experience we need to transcend in ourselves, and we need to learn. And this is not related to the myth of an idol, but it's related to effort, the big effort we need to make. We don't hear you.
Cytat, który jest dla nas bardzo ważny, bo on jest z takiej książki.
This is a quote which is important from a book which describes cultures that dreamt of community. Małgorzata wrote, to retain water in the soil, we need a social system that will retain love. This is from a book by Urszula Jabłońska. We do recommend this. To retain water in the soil, we need a social system which will retain love. So now time is up, so thank you. Piotr has also written that attachment, loss, community, these are also important words. Engagement, involvement, this is important, to be together. It's not easy. And so thank you. And the next